Hello and good day to everyone. We are the Group 5 and we are going to discuss about selecting appropriate material for teaching literature. But before we proceed, let us first define what is literature. Literature is composed of literary works in a language by which a community defines themselves. Literature may be classified according to language, national origin, historical period, genre, and subject matter. Some literatures are treated separately by language, by nation, or by subject. According to Hirsch, literature includes any text which is worthy to be taught to students. Some example of this is essay, biography, autobiography, journalism, journals, historical books, poetry, fiction, non-fiction, drama, mystery, science fiction. An specific example of this is the book or the novel that Dr. Jose Rizal wrote, which is the Rolling Tangere and El Filibusterismo. And another example is Florante at Laura and Ibong Adarna. These books, we have learned them already when we were in junior high school and when we are in first year college. So the study of literature also includes meta-language, meaning in various areas talk about language, images, and text. Meta-language is words or symbols for talking about language itself. An example of this is verb, adjectives, adverbs, and adjectives. They are all words that we use to describe other words. Now let's proceed with the instructional materials. Instructional materials are devices that assist the facilitator in teaching and learning process. Curriculum cannot be easily implemented without it, and teacher uses them to achieve their teaching and learning objectives. Some instructional materials are necessary for social studies. An example of these are chalkboard, graph, charts, pictures, diagrams, cartoons, slides, print sheets, and television. Instructional materials are not self-supporting, they are supplementary training devices. So instructional materials provide the core information that students will experience, learn, and apply during the learning process. They hold the power to engage or demotivate students. For example, instructional materials should be based on the needs of the learner and depends on the changes in the society. Like for example, what's happening now, the change in the curriculum in the school with 2020 to 2021, which changed because of the pandemic. Instructional materials changes drastically. Like for example, school uses online platforms like Google Classroom, Zoom, and others to communicate with their learners. Therefore, instructional materials must be carefully planned, selected, organized, refined, and used in a course for the maximum effect. The planning and selection of instructional materials should take into consideration both the depth and breadth of content so that students' learning is optimal. Instructional materials promote teacher efficiency and improve learners' performance. Instructional materials make learning more realistic, interesting, practical, and appealing. Now, let's move on to the selecting appropriate materials. Wilson stated or suggested 4 major criteria to consider in selecting instructional materials for literature. It is abbreviated in the acronym CARE. The C means cultural enrichment, A means authenticity of the material, R means relevant language enrichment, E means its requirement in reading and understanding. Now, let's move on to the cultural enrichment.
So, in selecting an appropriate material for teaching literature, we must consider the four criteria as what Bulusan suggests, wherein the first one is the cultural enrichment, wherein a teacher must consider the cultural aspect of a language learning in selecting instructional materials, because a second language instruction becomes more meaningful and makes a positive contribution to a society, wherein, as Nassim Maradi pointed out, that teaching culture provides English as foreign language learners with an opportunity to reconsider their cultural system and appreciate, modify, and probably reject and replace it. And he pointed out also that the culturally filled materials can create a colorful world that can help the learner feel for the codes and preoccupations that can shape the real society through the help of the literature. So we must bear in mind that even we have a different culture and language to each other, it doesn't matter for us to learn, because it helps us to enlighten, appreciate, and gain more knowledge about the culture of others. The second one is the authenticity of the material, wherein we can see that if one material is authentic if it establishes a strong relevance and a firm link to the motivation, needs and the backgrounds of the learners. As what Keshabari pointed out, that a good instructional material to literature teaching can become authentic if a good source and context can contextualize the learner's activities, and learners can improve their performance and their higher levels of work-related satisfaction if the material was authentic, as what Fogel pointed out. So we must bear in mind that in choosing the material, we must consider if it was authentic, because the authenticity of the material can help to motivate and give an interest to the learners.
Relevant language enrichment. Literature provides learners with a wide range of individual lexical or syntactic items, so students become familiar with the many features of written language. Reading a substantial and contextualized body of text. So it introduces an intense range of vocabulary, dialogues, and prose that can be used to prepare the learners to communicate the language by using the new words which they learn from the literary text. Literature helps the learners to develop interpretative abilities. Pupils learn about the syntax and discourse function of sentence, a variety of possible structure and different ways of connecting ideas. So, pupils should learn this because syntax skills help them understand how sentences work, the meanings behind the word order, structure, and punctuation. It can help them understand and write increasingly complex texts. Good literature materials are those that can improve the learner's language skill, especially reading and speaking. So it means that it helps the learners to get familiar with the socio-political backgrounds of target language society, and also makes them understand how communication takes place in a particular community. Good literary materials are those that acquisition of linguistic or grammar competence and communicative competence. So good literary materials can make the students more aware of the language they are learning, help them develop skills and strategies they can apply in many different situations, and context, increase their interest and motivation, and make the learning of the language more enjoyable. Next is requirement in reading and understanding. The literary text should neither be too easy nor too difficult to understand. So, what the word we should use are the words that are fit or match to the student's vocabulary. Instructional materials for literature teaching should adapt according to the pupil's need and situation. And lastly is teachers should provide materials for literature teaching that are one step higher than the level of their production and understanding.